This has been talked about for decades, and I will refer back to Jeffrey Walton. Before my time, he was keen to get something like this together. The reason we're raising it now is if we are thinking we're going to start embracing Eurocode, if the power comes with having that professional register, basically this group in here online, if we can operate as one entity. Do we need a professional register for that? Yeah or no? I think there's some real merit if we do go down this way. So I'm going to set out a case for it, and then you guys get to debate whether it's a waste of time or not. So what we're looking at, well, the way I see it is, and a few of you have worked in the civil sector, I think you require specialist knowledge, which you can only get from experience in the sector to safely design this sector. So this isn't about protectionism in terms of stopping civil engineers operating this. This is actually about recognising that you need to have experience in here. I've seen some quite interesting cases, I'll put it like that, where other specialists have come in, worked in this sector, not quite understood the design process and what's required. Now, a lot of people say, well, the quarry regs specify it. Quarry regs, in my view, against my view, it's a minimum requirement what's set out. It's not a definition of a competency statement. That is for industry to set. And we'll probably hear from John Lewis in terms of what's coming out from Grenfell inquiry in terms of the responsibility of those professions and industries to set those competency levels. Is that even the right place for a register? So my other concern is looking around the room. We've got some fantastically experienced individuals here. Unfortunately, this is an ageing profession. We've got some brilliant people coming through. But what I'm really concerned about, particularly with the economy, is how we're passing that knowledge on, particularly as we're getting split up into consultancies, operators, etc. So from my point of view, I think the register is actually about the next generation. It's about how we mentor, train, and pass that knowledge on to the next generation. And the final thing, and this is something that's been raised several times in QNJAC, and whether it's for the register or not is almost a new point, is, I think we do need some kind of clear understanding, which we can all agree on in terms of what experience you need, what competence you need to be designing at different levels. And I'll go back to John's point before in terms of we've got these different categories, whether we call them Eurocode categories or not, but there's definitely some clear step changes between what can be done and what can't be done at different levels. And I would just like to see some granularity around that. So the other thing that I want to do is, I suppose, for this industry to be better recognised in terms of what we contribute, having taken that kind of sidestep into Atkins, which Steve's bravely done as well. It's very interesting working with the other engineering professions, and this sector is really overlooked. I think we have issues and certainly recognised issues in terms of recruiting and raising the profile in terms of what we do and what value we bring. If we do the register and we do then set some competency levels, we could potentially have a framework for training. So again, it's about the next generation. It's kind of setting out how we mentor these people through. I will always refer back, having done a lot of work with the reservoirs teams and how the reservoir engineers practice and mentor and train. If you look at the ICE in terms of the process of getting chartered engineer through the ICE, it's not anything like JobSOC. It is a mentorship scheme that you go through, and we don't really have that. And I think that's really missing from what we're doing. The final thing on there, that's a couple of points. One is obviously it's the operator's duty to make sure people are competent. A register potentially would help that. Now, it's very easy to fall and to talk about all the majors, yeah. They're all great, they're well represented here. The real challenge for those people who have been experienced with very small operators and operators who don't come to any events like this, don't even go to BAA or anything like that. They are wildcat operators. Is how do they make sure they get upon something appropriate? And the final comment is in conversation with the HSE. Whilst they can never endorse a register or promote it, what they do recognise is they really could do with some way to point operators or people that are struggling to find appropriately skilled professionals. And a register would be a very good place that they could point without making any personal recommendations. And I've also seen it from other professional organisations, big infrastructure, asset owners and stuff are really struggling basically to find you, and what they'll normally do is go to a big civil engineering company, and they're not, well, let's be honest, they're not Stevie Squid, not represented here in this group at all. So in terms of if we do have a register, we need to find a home for it. Potentially, we could actually be our own home if we wanted. We could look at the EIG, and we've had some really good conversations with the IOQ. Everybody's got a different view on this. So potentially, well, tonight we can say IOQ could be a home for it. It doesn't have to be, it's almost irrelevant. If we did set it up, in my mind, and other people have their own views, I think we'd probably look at our voluntary council. I'm looking around some places here. I think, you know, I think there'll be plenty of volunteers to kind of help manage that process. Application-wise, I think this is dead simple. It's a simple form with some clear competency levels. Now, on those competency levels, it will be all equivalent experience. And so I think we can make this very simple. We'll look, certainly want some affiliations, or certainly advertise it through the different groups that we are. Now, I'll talk about RoadJet in a moment, but the fee for RoadJet to join is only £12 a year. I think that is what we've got to be talking about. It's going to be a very minimal sum of money to join, and again, a very small application fee to be processed. I think this should be really quite simple, quite easy. It is almost kind of taking the room, everyone online, we kind of know each other, and just documenting that in a single place. In terms of barriers to entry, you know, this is another emotive question. I think some people are a bit worried about, oh, what's that register mean? Is it pay to play? How does it impact me and my organisation? If it's just more red tape, more hassle. I think if there was a register, this group needs to manage it, and actually, I think that takes all those problems away. It should be minimum cost, but we do have to recognise there is another register out there called RoadJet. So if you don't know RoadJet, it's the Register of Ground Engineering Professionals. And when it was first set up, I think I was just coming into Atkins, or I was still with AI at the time. I thought, oh, why are we bothering? I was really cynical there, and it doesn't sound like something we need. And one of my first questions, and I didn't even get to ask it when it was being talked about, because a few other people jumped in and say, will that register document your area of expertise? And the answer was no. And the reason for it, and I only really discovered this actually working with Atkins, is there's a lot of civil engineers who will practice ground engineering. Very, very common, and it's a real problem within the civil sectors. So that's what the register was set up to protect. The mandate was not then to divide within ground engineering what roles and area of expertise have got. So we've gone to RoadJet and said, please can you include a discipline in RoadJet, because it's the obvious place that we could go. RoadJet have rejected that request. We are not the only organisation to ask the question. The tunnelling engineers do not join RoadJet because they do not feel that they are adequately defined within RoadJet. I agree with them. I actually find it really disappointing they're not doing that, but you go back to the fundamental requirement for RoadJet. It's about structural engineers operating on foundation design. So it is with a real kind of sad heart going, well, RoadJet isn't the right place for us. If they're not going to accommodate, to be honest, a pretty minor request saying we would just like to be recognised within this category, it doesn't really work for us. More of a final point is, if you have looked at RoadJet, and some of you are probably members, they have a very generic grade scheme, level scheme, and you can see it's from civil engineering, and I'll read it more in terms of the professional grade you're at, as opposed to the technical level of competence. And I think, and certainly the conversation I've heard about Eurocode, what we do is very specialist, and there is certain levels of technical competence that we've all got. And I think I would rather see the register reflect that technical capability, and that for what category or wherever you're working, than just how senior you are, how old you are. I'd rather see the register being different to that. So what could it cover? Well, the first question is, do we even want to register? So we're going to do a poll, and it really is that question. Do we even want to entertain the idea of a register or not? If we do want to entertain that idea, you know, on the feedback forms, we're going to ask, well, what should be included on it? Is this just a geotechnical specialist register? Should we be including quarry designers and geologists? My personal view is I think we should, because I think actually there's a role here for everybody, and there's different skill sets there. And I would like to see some kind of formal mentorship as this, so new people coming in the industry have got a clear pathway ahead of them in terms of how, if they want to progress through the different geological or engineering and design grades. And the final thing, again, to debate at QNJAC, is does this help us define a competency matrix? So final thoughts. This is just a register. It really doesn't need to be complicated. The only issue we've got is RoadJEC at the moment are looking to change Eurocode to say anyone practicing Eurocode or doing ground engineering design must sign up to RoadJEC. And that is actually, I thought was really surprised and disappointed to hear that, because that's basically meaning that becomes a pay-to-play scheme. If we set up our own register, we get to determine how we do, and potentially we can fight that threat. If you see it as a threat, of course. So that's my final thought. Bit of time for you guys to debate it and see what you think. So, so enjoy.
Okay, everyone online. We're back in the room discussing the points that's just been raised by Thomas again. So if you want to unmute yourselves and we can have the similar debate online. Who wants to kick off with their thoughts?
Anthony, can I just, before we get individual thoughts, I just want to clarify something on this.
Yep.
I don't know whether everybody's had a chance to read the delegate pack, all the questions and answers that went in. I think, again, it's a bit like the first debate. There are some nuances here that people need to be aware of. And I'm not going to read all my answer because it's written down on the text. It's my answer is actually part of the delegate pack, but it does cover. I mean, I was asked to cover this by Tom and think about how to answer the question about if, how do you actually fit this with the professional bodies like GeolSoc and IOM3 and others who've got members that could be eligible to join that register? How does that work? And I put this note together, and what Tom was mentioned there about RoadJEC, the one thing that hasn't been discussed yet is RoadJEC includes IOM3, GeolSoc, and the Institute of Civil Engineers, and 2 bodies from Ireland as well. Now, it just so happens that the quarries regs, obviously at the moment, specify chartered engineer or chartered geologist as one of the requirements. And I think what needs to be brought out in this debate about RoadJEC is that the fact that those groups are already interconnected via RoadJEC. I'm not saying that's the greatest solution in the world or gives us all the right answers. It's just a fact. And I just wanted to make that point. And I think when we get back in the room, maybe we should mention that.
Okay. So Colin, I'm gonna, because obviously I haven't got a way of broadcasting your online voices as loudly as we can in the room, so I might have to be an interpreter. So you might have to feed me the line and I have to say it. But if you feel as if we need to raise that in the room, I can do that on your behalf.
Yeah. Okay. It's written down anyway. It's all written down so that people can read it, but I know that people don't always want to read stuff, or they can get halfway through things and think, oh, I've had enough of this, I'll just switch off. But I just think that needs to be made clear, because I strongly suspect there's a lot of people in the room who don't know a lot about RoadJEC.
Okay. Yeah, I'm one of them.
Actually, Anthony, as well, the irony of all this is that the one institution that, the one body that RoadJEC doesn't incorporate is the Institute of Quarrying.
Okay.
And of course, the Institute itself has got a very strong affinity with what we're talking about for obvious reasons. And It's not a very straightforward path to follow, all of this argument.
I am aware that Thomas has met with James Thorne of the Institute of Quarrying.
Yeah.
Conversations has had. It's been suggested that Thomas has obviously explained the journey so far, the issues that he's encountered. James Thorne raised it with the Institute of Quarrying board, and there was a mixed bag of responses to the Institute of Quarrying board. So
Yeah.
it was almost a 50-50 split, with the instruction to James Thorne is to explore this further and gathering more information on it. But in principle, the Institute of Quarrying didn't see an issue with hosting a register. But it's far from a kind of that's a done deal. That's it. It's an exploratory thing, and I think one of the things is looking for some direction from this community of you all, is to get a feeling for a sense of direction as to which way to take it, if to take it at all. Of course, there doesn't have to be a register in any shape or form, but hopefully Thomas has put those points across in a way to spark a debate. So it'll be interesting to see what comes back from the room. What I did when the feedback was given is I went and held the microphone up next to the speaker. Did that work for you all? Because we'd not tested that, so that was just an impromptu thing that I had to go at.
I could hear the response from the floor, not so much the speaker position wasn't great, but the floor question, the floor answering, I could hear okay, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously some people chipped in that didn't have microphones, so there's no way on earth you'd pick that up. So I'm trying my best, whizzing around the floor, trying to hold microphones up to speakers and so on and so forth. But I'll do the best I can for you all guys online. So does anyone else want to weigh in at this point and voice their views of around a register?
Go on.
No, go on, Tom.
I would just say that at the moment, obviously, the quarries regs specifies a chartered engineer needs to sign off on those various aspects of regulation. So I don't really see at the moment that is sufficient for what is done at the moment. Trying to bring in extra levels of requirements just means that it's more prohibitive for people to come through from universities with less experience. I think what you're looking at is we've got an industry with very little people coming into it. We're going to be limiting it by introducing those levels even more. So I think maybe instead of making it a register and a limited number of people on the register, we need to be looking at how a code or whatever it is. I don't think Eurocode, but a way of assessing the assessment analysis that's gone into a design, rather than actually done.
I mean, basically, we've got chartered geologists, chartered engineers, and that's the qualification that's there. I mean, I don't have a problem with having a register of people, but it's how high you set the bar. That's the issue, as Tom quite rightly says. We've got to attract people into the sector, and I think that we've got we're geotechnical specialists, and then we've also now you're checking yourself with a self audit and that, and you're giving that information to your clients or your company, and so we're fairly, I would say, fairly robustly questioned on our abilities, and also we meet quite a number of people who will judge us on what professional qualifications and capabilities that we have. I mean, I know Silk, in the brownfield land sector, they have a number of registers for people as well, which is is good, but sometimes you get to a situation where if you're not on that list, you know, it's difficult to use that. And as we say, you know, there are lots of other professions who are fighting for those gifted and technical students who are leaving university. So whilst I don't have an issue with there being a list to go to, how high the bar set, I think the bar set fairly high now because we're all chartered engineers and chartered geologists, and I know, you know, what it took me to get where I was, and as I would explain, it's the same for everybody who sat around this table tonight, you know. So yeah, okay. And obviously the you know, the particular institutes that look after that chartered engineering status or chartered geologists, you know, they've got their own high standards to maintain to allow that you to gain to be a chartered engineer or geologist. So it's a yeah.
Okay. Tom, I think you were going to say something earlier, or was Rupert? Sorry.
No, I just agree with that. I think that there's a lot of with being a member of, you know, you might be a chartered geologist or a chartered engineer, and then you've also got your professional institution as well. Member of the IOMQ, a member of the Institute of Quarrying. There's lots and lots of bodies, and I think clients who see big lists of post-nomials after name, often there's a lot of confusion there. I think it's a fairly simple system at the moment. If you're a chartered geologist or environmentalist or chartered engineer, you have within yourself the rules of that governing body to follow. Your integrity is that you will not take on a design above your capacity. So it doesn't matter really to me whether you're a chartered geologist or a chartered engineer. If you're a member of a chartered institution and you have integrity, that's part of the whole member of being the institution, is you've got a level of integrity to be honest about your capabilities. So I don't know whether there needs to be another level of sort of checking, and it seems a complicated factor to me. I think that the system has its own method of policing by the individuals, and you know, if people are going to sort of lie about their capabilities and take on work they shouldn't, then that's obviously a bad thing. But that's something to be dealt with by the professional institutions those people are a member of.
I don't think, unless I'm misinterpreting it, I didn't think that it was an additional. You could choose to join it or not choose to join it. Looking at the, you know, what's being said, I'm not suggesting. I agree with you. We are all governed by our professional bodies, and there's rules and regulations. But I mean, if we all chose to join a list, then as quite rightly Colin said, and I've read within the papers, then it will be somewhere where probably the smaller companies who will now, I mean, at the moment I've got a couple of quarries which are going from what you would call an appraisal. They're now moving into what you would call appraisals and assessments. And of course, then they start to seek what would cost as a competent engineer or geologist. And if you're on the list, then it is something that can be, you know, the HSE or a quarry manager can look up. But I'm not advocating it's an additional qualification. I'm just suggesting that probably, you know, there are other professional bodies who deal with like brownfield land and well, like ROGEP, you know, that's the title's in the name, isn't it? It's ground engineering professional.
We're just reconvening in the room. Sorry,
Yeah,
John. So
okay,
I'm just
then,
going to
yeah.
allow over and switch mics. Bear with me.
Sounds like a good discussion from what I've heard of everybody talking. So, if there are any questions from anybody, any of the facilitators on the table has got any questions? There's a lot of discussion around this.
Hang on, John.
More guidance be given to operators as to how to better point specialists and request competency statements. That was one thought. There were lots of others on there. Is that sort of as a thought for consultants? Do you mean as working, or back to the regs? You know, it does say that the operator would appoint competent people. So when we do make those appointments, what are we asking for? Proof of evidence, and are we asking for it on behalf of individuals, or are we asking it from the company? And one thought I had on that was, well, the condition is right in that company for those people to maintain professional development, develop their skills. If you get thoughts of that, self-assessed matrix, and then it's an administration type affair, or is there going to be some sort of overview to ensure that people applying are competent? And I think, if you're going to go down this route, it would probably morph eventually into the latter. So it would be a bit like if you apply for chartership with a job SOC, you are peer reviewed as to whether you are competent or not. And then backing up all of this, you would then have skills matrices for each of the different levels that you are applying for. And I think that would then help people train and guide their professional development. So I think, the fundamental question first off is, do you want to register or not? And then start thinking about whether it's, self-assessment or whether it's peer reviewed. And I think they two fundamental questions. The rest of it is periphery at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that's really well put. Thank you, Craig. As you say, the first question is, do we want to register? All the details can be discussed later. Sorry,
I'm not a beer yet. No, well, I am. I think there's a benefit to the consultant, and whether there's a benefit to those of us that work in the operators. I certainly, if there was a list of competent people or people that I could go to that aren't the people I always ring, it would be useful, if only to just go and get some quotes and just challenge the current consultants and just check that they're keeping their prices on the straight line. But yeah, I get the support of it. I just think it's how you implement it, really. Is it a glorified yellow pages for specialists, or is it something that's going to drive competency and improvement of people in the industry? If it's the latter, absolutely gets my support. If it's the former, probably do it with a Google.
Yeah, and I think that'd be really good. I mean, I know Emma, Lindsay, if you want to make your point about how it's an extra step to, at the minute, when you're talking about competency, people have just got chartership to aim for. If it's something else to aim for, to go through levels on this register. I mean, you made it much more eloquently, Emma, so I don't know if you
just very, very briefly on table point before that might get across, there was a very, very strong feeling. It does need to be a proper competency assessment, not just a yellow page, because the yellow pages doesn't really address the issue. I think that was the came out of our discussion. if we're going to go down this route, it's going to be done right.
Yeah, good point. I don't know.
I mean, Chris basically said what I said anyway, but at the moment there is only sort of the one stepping stone for a chartership, and for some of us it's quite a long way off. So to provide those stepping stones and sort of like, yes, I mean there's no difference at the moment between myself. I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years and somebody who's just come in like fresh graduate. There is no, on paper, nobody can really tell the difference who's got more sort of experience in doing it. So if you've got some stepping stones between sort of fresh face and chartership, then you've got something to work towards, and it's a benchmark, especially if it's like things like recruitment. So unchartered versus chartered in recruitment, how do you know how much experience they have in X, Y, and Z? If it's there and you sort of hit some stepping stones, then it's much more easy for somebody to come along and be, oh, well, actually, well, she has done X, Y, and Z, therefore she would probably be good for the position. Or whereas actually they've just come in, they don't have a clue what they're doing, they need some more help. So there are some steps, and at the moment there's nothing that would explain that.
and they have like a post chartship as well. And I think we do forget about, you know, you can mentor people up to chartship, but as soon as you get chartship, that does not mean that you've learned everything and your learning stops. So actually, I'll take your point and say, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I think there's beyond chartership as well, because that's something you become chartered, if you get a senior, you get my pay rise, etc. Your learning does not stop. How do we support people once they get beyond that chartership? So really, really good kind of conversation. But I will go back to Chris's question on this. There is a lot of detail in it, and it is complicated. I think the question for today is, do we even want to entertain the idea? And if we do want to entertain the idea, then we can discuss it further. If we don't want to entertain the idea, there's no point talking about the detail behind it. But I believe, Anthony, you've probably got some online contribute, and then we'll pass the question.
So this is the last point, shall we move on?
Thank you. I'm just going to raise some of the points that was raised by the group online. I'm going to interpret on their behalf, which I apologise because they know this subject much better than I do. I think some of the points that's raised was probably echoed by Otto, which was about there was concerns about extra barriers being put in place, especially when wanting to attract a younger generation, a new generation coming up through the ranks, that if they've got to then achieve a register and can they do that? So that links to how far the bar is going to get set for whatever register might appear. So hopefully, gents, have iterated that point enough. Colin has said that in the delegate pack, he has put some comments in there that he encourages everyone to read because he thinks he's you know, there's some valid points in there. Colin, are you there? Nice.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I've just referred to the delegate pack. Is there anything else you want me to add to that?
Not really. I think it's just a case of allowing people to understand some of the interrelationships between the bodies that are involved and how RoadJet fits into that, so that at least they've got some information there to help them understand what the position is.
So Colin's basically just saying that he's put some comments about the interrelationship between the different bodies, and you know, his point was as well, which you raised earlier. Does everyone actually know what RoadJet is in the room? Which I don't know the answer to. I don't know what it is. So I can only hope that makes sense to everybody.
And we put in the delegate pack as well that everybody should cover as part of the joining instructions. Could we move to the quick poll now, please?
Anthony, you'll need to switch it on first, so give us a thumbs up when you're ready.
Okay, everyone online, you should see a QR code appear, and this is a vote on whether we think we should have a register or not. I can see results coming in. Are you all okay? Can you vote via your phones, things via that code? Somebody could just take yourselves off mute and tell me if it's okay.
Yeah, I can access it.
Perfect, thank you, Tom. So we're just watching the results on the screen now. With 26 votes in, it's getting 50-50. 31 people, 52 to 48. It's definitely splitting the audience.
David Jameson just said, I think we split the room. I think we certainly have. Fantastic. Let me just get Chris your slides up. So thank you very much for that final topic, and then definitely a well-earned beer or two. So Chris and John put this together.
So just as a final discussion topic for the evening, we're going to open the floor to everybody here as sort of industry representatives. Sort of get some feedback, hopefully, on what everybody thinks that the Geotechnical Subcommittee of QNJAC should be focusing on for guidance. Point out that John Lewis wrote 99% of this, so I'm just the eye candy at the front of but any issues, please speak to John. So initially, going back, topics for guidance were promoted by the HSE. That's since been superseded. And now the subcommittee can promote topics for consideration or by themselves, or also the QNJAC groups as well. Key point, I think it's imperative that we understand the wider need across the industry, and where operators see that industry guidance would have the greatest impact. So it's really great to get that feedback from people that are doing it. You know, what we don't want is for the subcommittee to be an echo chamber of people that always have the same experiences. So it's really a fantastic opportunity to open it out and hear more. Rob mentioned earlier, but since 2009, the QNJAC Geotechnical Subcommittee has produced 18 pieces of guidance. I think most recently was the geotechnical self-audit, but there's a lot of great pieces of guidance there, and there's 5 that are still in the pipeline. The most significant of which is the fundamental requirements of geotechnical assessments, which is obviously a really important piece of work for our industry as well. Just lastly, before I leave you open to the debate, just a few ideas for what the future guidance might look like. Implementation of Eurocode. So we've seen the vote today. People seem to be keen to at least look at adopting Eurocode. So what does that look like? How long does it take? What are the steps required? It's been 24 years since the quarries regs came around. Do they need reviewing? Do they need refreshing, updating? Is it worth looking at that? So that'd be another good one. And finally, there's subsurface voids. So can we have some more guidance on that? Either legacy mine workings or naturally occurring voids as well. So, you know, is that something there? But that's by no means an exhaustive list. You know, please come up with as many ideas as you can and feed them back. So again, there'll be an opportunity to feedback. I think we've probably got slightly less than this one. We'll give 20 minutes for a bit of a discussion, and then we'll catch up at the end. So please feel free.
Okay, me again. So you've heard Chris kick that off. 18 pieces of guidance produced by the QNJAC Geotechnical Group. I know there's 2 more things on the way. So what future guidance or what things should QNJAC be getting involved in or taking a look at? Any thoughts?
I think subsurface voids is certainly a good thing to be looking at. You know, it's more guidance around that. I think there's a lot of you know, new ground investigation techniques, geophysical methods that aren't necessarily, you know, listed in one place that could be quite handy to go to and look at a list. Trying to think of other things.
I would just help you with that one, Tom. I would endorse that one because one of the last projects I did before I departed AI was on voids, actually, in the Mendips. And no great surprise to find voids there, of course. But it was what happened as a result of working with the management about how to resolve it, how to set your stall out to restrict access, how long you should leave it there for, who should be invited to go in and have a look. And it was all, a lot of it was, it was far from being generic. It was all bespoke, actually. Again, it was judgment. It was working together. It was taking measurements. It was, and some of the techniques you mentioned there about new geophysics, we were using deep penetrating ground radar, which was quite useful, but didn't give us all the answers. But in the end, it came down to managing an event, really. And also, because obviously, if you're going to cordon off an area like that in an active area, it's very expensive, both in time and in income. But obviously, you can't then, at the same time, you cannot compromise safety. And it was an interesting exercise, I thought. And I think that John's paper, his question, his answer, whatever it was, on this, I think it's a good question to ask. Anybody else?
Thank you, Colin.
I'm a bit conscious of that there are 3 other names on our list here, and nobody's appearing other than 3 or 4 of us. I don't know why that is.
I'm just going to stop sharing so we can bring everyone on the main screen.
Yeah.
I think the only other aspect I'd add to, something good for the industry to do would be to look at learnings from current quarries and past events. So, I mean, I think having the industry collaborate to put together a list of, say, for instance, depths of quarries, and safety events, things that trigger sort of that further aspect of study. I think there's a lot of aspects that we lose by not looking at things that have happened in the past. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think I'll be honest with you. I mean, I used to read the transactions of the Institution of Mining Engineers and look at some of the old periodicals that there used to be in when the coal industry was at the forefront of providing power, I would imagine. But there was a lot of papers, a lot of discussion, and a lot of interesting information within those journals that you could go back to and look at. And I think that's one thing that the quarrying sector does. We tend to miss out on, as you say. We've been looking at geotechnical assessments and designs for tips and excavations for quite a long time now, and there's not really a database or a journal or don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing the Quarry Management magazine, but what I'm saying is that there's technical papers are not there in what some geotechnical engineers or geologists or mining engineers have come across during their work, whereas mining engineers in the mining industry, whether it's gold, coal, metals, you've only to look at some of the papers in the Australian, South African and Canadian journals, and there's lots and lots of information there that other people can pull ideas from or look at, things afresh. So that could be something that QNJAC could look at. Is having a bi-annual sort of journal or papers or whatever.
I mean, through the network with the Institute of Quarrying, we can certainly get articles and papers and technical papers into the Quarry
Yeah,
Management
we
magazine.
can.
But
Yeah.
you know, I would need this community to forward information to me. But I think it's a cracking idea. You should be having stuff like that, because
Yeah.
otherwise the Quarry Management magazine, it ends up being adverts and promotional articles instead of something that's, you know, educational, which is what it's meant to be. With the occasional advert and promotion. But you know, if anyone was to send me a paper, I could certainly work with the QMJ people and our marketing and communications people at MPQC and the Institute of Quarrying, and turn it into something that we can publish.
I don't disagree, and but there are two types out there. I mean, some of the journals I've read, you know, the articles are written for a wider audience to understand, and then you get the transactions, which is the papers that are written for people of a similar ilk who will look at a lot of the information that may well be provided in detail on calculations and assumptions. So yeah, it's certainly worth exploring, I think. Yeah.
There's no reason at all why Quarry Management can't have a dedicated QNJAC section.
Yeah.
No, good idea. I've made notes of that one. Any other thoughts what QNJAC should be looking at or could be looking at?
I mean, again, I've seen in the pack, there's, you know, advice both competent geotechnical specialists, but quarry managers and their team as such. And I don't know what everybody else does, but well, you know, you'll give toolbox talks and explain about geotechnical assessments and appraisals to, you know, staff, and that is to, you know, people who are driving trucks or about to start an excavator at 7 o'clock on a morning. You need them to be able to look at, you know, their working environment and take 5. And I know we've done that, but it probably could be emphasised a little bit more with the quarry manager and his, you know, his 8.1D and members of staff within the quarry in general, so that they're not frightened of calling for a geotechnical specialist if there's something they're not sure of. I mean, I attended a talk quite recently, which was a health and safety guy, and we do in this country tend to have a blame game. So people tend to keep their mouth shut, as we well know with some other papers and things that have been reported recently, and that's something we need to get away from. Really, is that people will take hold of something and report it. And these are the guys and girls who are at the face every day driving a front end loader or an excavator, aren't they?
Yeah. When I was a quarry manager, I'll repeat the advice that Chris Smithers gave me, which is if I saw something that I was not worried about, but if I saw something and I thought, what's that? Is there something going to happen there? Chris said, I'd rather you ring me as a geotechnical specialist. We both look at it and realize that it's nothing. I'd rather you do that than you think it's nothing and don't ring anybody.
Yeah.
And and I've kept that piece of advice, and I passed that on to other quarry managers that I come across to say, keep that, because I think that's a sound piece of advice. Is don't look at a stockpile or don't look at something that's cracking and think, it'll be fine. Ring someone and go, do you think it'll be fine?
So that's a fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
But I think it's. I found that that particular point, it's variable. You know, some quarry managers are very, very keen to sort of discuss things they've seen on site, and others you just won't hear from at all. So, but how do we equalise? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's how do we get that more equal across the board in quarries that they all feel they can call? Yeah.
We're just reconvening now, so I'm just going to switch microphone. I'm going to try something different for this next bit. Bear with me.
It's well, I tell you what, I'll say what Tom's just told me. Really, what the sort of wants to look at is if QNJAC goes back and looks at everything that's already been done, is it time to review and refresh what's already been published? You know, again, if it's since 2009, a lot of it might be well, not necessarily outdated, but can be improved upon. So I think that's one of them. Does anybody have anything else that would be good to look at?
We've got a list. First of all, we've got climate change and the impact of the rainfall tips and water management. Probably more on the basis of rooms, design, which is some bits where does it tie into that? Inspection complaint basically also raised and criticism that a lot of that is specific to rock quarrying, like hard rock stuff, rather than ground line, and how we balance that out. And then we have a couple of things about movements with operations. There is a boundary and see saying that we have the opposite of that and how we give some
yeah, some fantastic points there, and that's the impact over decades is something that I've thought about myself. That's really really key, I think, for the future. Is there anything else?
Yeah, that time we thought. That firm managers can print out, sit down with their staff and spend 15-20 minutes talking through various subjects. Myself, I've looked at the idea of in a similar approach to the aviation industry, where we share experience of failures, lessons learned, and then remediation. I feel like we have done it before in QNJAC, but it's not often, and it's something we should do more of. And finally, about the idea of coming up with more training courses. MPQC do their own, but by having training material available on QNJAC, again, that's a bit more than a toolbox tool. But the different roles for mobile plant operators, site supervisors, quarry managers, the different again, the hard rock, sand and gravel, more applicable environments. We do spend a lot of money on repeat training, and by having this material available, we can do refresher courses without that huge outlay of money having to redo the MPQC courses. Yeah, no, again, fantastic points, and I hope somebody's made a note of all these. It's useful. We are getting pushed for time, so we're going to call a halt to that. There is one last vote, I think, which is hopefully you've all enjoyed this and you'd like to do it again in the future. But I think it's on. Would you like us to do it in the future? I'll stop talking. Is that your vote there, Chris? Oh, there's 12 on there. Once you voted, Rob's going to step up and just wrap up today. Can you should all have one of the feedback forms. So the polls are just polls, it's just to get a pulse of today, but this is the most important document of the night. So if obviously listen to Rob, he's going to do a brilliant placement speech, but if you want to start filling this out and you can multitask, please do. Once you've completed it, please pass it back to one of the QNJAC team around today.
As long as you talk about it.
Excellent. Well, thanks everyone. I'm glad this vote looks reasonable. We're all standing up here. Just get some. It was the other way around. Got a few. I want to sum up briefly. But also, I just want to thank a few people as well and take the time for that. Just in case I forget, I do want to just thank those that are online. You may not be aware in the room here, but we've had, I think it's about 17 people visit online throughout this. So thanks. I know it's not easy when you're trying to engage in this format, but I hope we've got some detail from it. We have heard your points as well via Anthony. And Anthony, thank you for kind of manning that as well. And all the other support as well, both for the QNJAC and the IOQ. You will notice actually on your tables there are some boxes. It's not bottles of whiskey. I'm trying to get a thing that's QNJAC branded bottles. It was good to spread the word about QNJAC. So I hope that the questions that we've posed tonight triggered some conversation. I've definitely felt that sat over there on the table and through the comments I heard from the others. That was the point of me to reiterate, QNJAC is here just to facilitate the discussion. And I hope you've seen or felt both sides of that. We will take away your comments, as Tom said, this forum is very important really, as is, we will take the notes and facilitators have made and the results from this, especially to continue the work on this and provide you with some feedback as to the results and how it went. And on that note, the working group within the QNJAC subcommittee that have been working on this have asked if they can stay together as a working group to do exactly that, to provide us with an ongoing closure. I want to thank GEARS and GWP for sponsoring this event, along with the IOQ as well, because there's a cost to all of this, and I'm sure you'll agree that it's been money spent to do this. QNJAC operates a very slim budget, and a reminder really that everyone that works represents industry, regulator, trade associations are volunteering their time for this. The meetings, the travel, the work, all this guidance, the review of the guidance, it's not, it can be quite challenging work, but also I'd like to think, in my experiences, it's also quite rewarding. So I do want to take the opportunity to thank the QNJAC committee, of which there are a good number here tonight, and those that engage with it over 30 years. But specifically as well, I do want to really try and embrace the working group that have focused on tonight. If I could ask them to come and just kind of show who you are, maybe just stand at the tables just so we can see around who everyone is, because I'm particularly pleased with how tonight's gone in terms of its first time. So I mean, if I just ask for those that were working group to stand up and just if we could just give them a round of applause. Thanks a lot. We've got some good feedback, and particularly around the potential to hold more of these events. So I think we will. Like I say, the real focus of QNJAC has been around and is always going to be around guidance for creators. But to have this kind of facility to vent some of these subjects that get discussed, I hope it gives you a little insight into some of the conversations that will happen within the QNJAC committee. And a point there is it's not a closed subcommittee geotechnics by any means. If anyone is interested in engaging with us, we're just attending some of those meetings, possibly joining the committee, obviously more than one. We've had some recent recruits, and hopefully they've had a good night tonight engaging with this event for us. So Tom has really been an instigator in this as well, and we've heard some of his own opinions tonight. I think that Tom is he's quite a brave move as well to actually have to stand and give that opinion, which I know others will have different opinions on. So I'd just like to thank Tom for actually making that step out and actually giving his view on things.
And with that said, I don't think there's much more to say. I'm just making sure I've actually thanked everyone there. Hopefully the conversation will continue at dinner, and if you see anyone with the QNJAC logo on, most of them just stood there. You can always ask them to capture any more comments that you may have. But hopefully those discussions will play tonight and through the rest of the IG. Catch up with you. Thanks so much.